Hey guys, welcome back to Teal House Farm. Today we're going to be talking about how we try to eliminate as much food waste as possible. And I'm going to give you just a real life example here. We had a birthday party this week, and Sam is also from a large family, so that meant a lot of food. And we did tacos and chips and dip and fruit, and so what we ended up with in the leftover pile was a lot of random taco stuff and not huge quantities of anything. And so the normal tendency, the normal feeling is, oh, it's not very much, it's not worth saving, go ahead and pitch that. But it's not true. Even a little bit of food can be worth saving and can help impact your food budget in the future. So I'm going to show you everything that we have left over and then how we're going to preserve it or repurpose it so that we're not wasting anything. So here's what we have left over. The biggest quantity thing that we have left over are the soft tortilla shells. I just wasn't sure how many tacos people would eat and whether people would want to do hard tacos or soft tacos, so I definitely bought extra soft tacos just in case. But the reason extra soft tacos is something that I've decided to buy is because I knew that they were going to be really easy to use up in our family. We use them all the time for sandwich wraps, breakfast wraps, making little pizzas for the kids for lunch, and so it's not going to be hard to use these up. But this is a good amount. So to prevent them from going bad, what I'm going to do is take the one that isn't open, so this one, and I'm just going to freeze it just like this. Some people like to put paper towels in between their soft tacos before they freeze them. You guys know that we don't use paper towels, I hardly ever buy them because it's just an extra expense you don't need. And I have found that just freezing them in the original packaging, as long as you are careful to put them on top of the freezer stash and so nothing is pressing down on them, that the tacos don't stick together, the wraps don't stick together. And once they've thawed and you're ready to use them, they pull apart just like they were fresh. So I have not had any problems with them like compressing and becoming a clump. I could see how that'd be a problem if you're not careful and you throw them in the freezer and then, you throw a T-bone steak on top or something and the weight compresses them. But as long as you're careful to put them on the top, that should be fine. So one of these we're gonna freeze, and then two of these we're just gonna put in our bread bin, and they will definitely be used for lunches this week. And I think what we probably will do is use them for mini pizzas, and we're gonna help repurpose some of the other things that we have left over to make those mini pizzas as well. The next one that's really easy to preserve is the meat, and I'd say we have about a pound of taco meat here. And this is already in a Ziploc bag, and so I'm just gonna freeze it just like this. Squeeze all the extra air out and freeze it. And then next time we want to have tacos, we can just defrost it or have a taco pie or a taco casserole. A pound of meat is fine for our family right now because the kids are still little. I can definitely see how as the kids get larger, gonna need more volume. And something that I do to add volume to meat really cheaply is adding beans. And so if I decided I needed more than a pound for whatever recipe I was cooking, I would use either white beans or like pinto beans work fine, and I would just cook them and then mix them in from the meat. I like to use dry beans because they're extremely cheap. I also home can dry beans so that I have ready to use beans on the shelf that are really cheap, and I can link that video below as well. But we're gonna freeze this just like this in with those tortillas, so we'll have tortillas and the meat just sitting in the freezer for the next time I use it. I do keep a freezer inventory and an app that's called No Waste, which is a free app to use. And it just helps you keep an inventory in your freezer because it can be easy for a freezer to become a black hole of what did I put in here. I also recommend, and I will do this if you're using a Ziploc bag, to write what it is in Sharpie so you don't forget, because frozen meat kind of all looks the same after a while. And if you're using, I use those silicone reusable bags a lot, or mason jars sometimes. You can use like a wet erase marker. Dry erase markers don't work well in the freezer, but a wet erase marker works well. You mark your bag that way, and then when you wash it, the label comes right off. All right, next we have some green chilies that people could have put on their tacos, and I don't have very many left. And so with these, I'm actually going to freeze these in an ice cube tray. This is pretty simple, and this is very similar to how I make baby food, is you freeze it in these cute little ice cubes, and then you have a little small portion size all portioned out, because green chilies are something that really Sam and I are the only ones that like. The kids, like I said, are still pretty young, not a big fan of real spicy things. So So if we're having a family taco night or we make pizza and we want some spicy chilies on it, we're just gonna use a little bit, not a lot, because the kids won't like it. And so Sam and I will just put it on our part. So having these in the freezer means that I have a pre-portioned small little amount set up, and I'll just have to heat up 1 cube and just dump it on whatever I want it, and it'll be ready to go, instead of opening a half-pint jar of our home canned chilies every time. So we got 5 out of that bag, and we'll freeze them just like this, and once they're frozen, so leave them in overnight, then I'm going to pop them out and put them in one of my silicone reusable bags so that I can have this ice cube tray back for other things. Next up, we have hard taco shells. Now, we don't really eat hard tacos here. The kids just end up crushing them and make a huge mess, and so we almost only do soft tacos at home. And so I want to repurpose these into something that is not a hard taco, and so I'm actually going to make these taco shells into breadcrumbs. And they'll be a great substitute for breadcrumbs for things like fried green tomatoes, fried pickles, mixing them with butter and putting it on top of like homemade mac and cheese. And so even though it is going to be a cornmeal breadcrumb instead of a breadcrumb, it is a great substitute. Also, if you are gluten-free, a cornmeal breadcrumb, usually, not sure about the specific brand, right? You gotta be careful because I know sometimes they mix white flour in, but it can be a good substitute for you, and repurposing these taco shells is basically a free way to do it. So let's get the food processor out and get these crumbled up. Okay, we're almost kind of to the end of what we got. So we got all this random shredded lettuce, which as you all know does not last very long in the fridge, maybe a day or two. We've got a little bit of shredded cheese, and I have some leftover diced tomatoes from the tacos. So what we're going to do first is we're going to make a real quick chopped salad that we're going to have with our dinner tonight. So this is Sunday, and if you've been hanging around here, you know that I don't cook Sunday nights. We almost always do frozen pizzas, because Sunday night is my night off, or as off as you can get when you have a large family of little children. And so we're gonna have mixed salad with our frozen pizzas. I have this spinach left over from salad the other night. It's got some spinach and some cucumber chunks in it. Not very much left, but we're gonna be able to take this plus what we have left over from the party to make a great salad. And we still will have a bit of tomato left over, and I'll talk about what I'm gonna do with that in a second. Okay, next up we have just a little bit of cheese, and I'm just gonna save this to mix with the mozzarella cheese that we already always have in the fridge. And so when the kids do their pizzas for lunch this week, they will just mix mozzarella and this leftover shredded cheddar together, and it'll be just fine on little kids' pizza. We'll just call it a 2-cheese pizza, and it'll be great. So just squeeze the air out, and this is just gonna go in the fridge. Obviously you can freeze shredded cheese and it does great, but I know I'm gonna use this in the next couple days, so not worried about that at all. Okay, last thing, we still have quite a bit, well, not quite a bit. I'd say this is probably a cup and a half worth of diced tomatoes left. And we are actually going to use this to pre-make the pasta sauce the kids will use for their tortilla pizzas, with those leftover tortillas and the leftover shredded cheese later this week. So if you don't want to do this work that I'm going to show you, you can freeze chunked tomatoes. You just wouldn't eat them raw when you defrost them. You could freeze them, and then any recipe that you have that uses a cooked tomato, just toss it in there. You know, an egg scramble, some sort of casserole, making pasta sauce out of them, which we're going to do in a second. So you can definitely freeze these. If you put these in a mason jar with, you know, a nice lid on it, it'll last in your fridge, I'd say, 4 or 5 days too. So if you're a big tomato eater, like I am, I love tomatoes, I could just put a little salt and pepper on this and eat it as a snack over the next couple of days too. So that's another option. But because I know we want to do those pizzas, and I know that those little tortilla pizzas don't use a lot of sauce, which usually means we crack open a jar of pasta sauce or of pizza sauce, and then we end up with half a jar left over that we have to kind of figure out how we want to use. We are going to make the sauce now, and then we have a small amount of sauce for their tiny pizzas to use later this week. So let's do that real quick. Since I don't have a really large amount of tomatoes left, it's not enough to use the food processor, so we'll use this bullet style blender, and we're going to blend them up real quick and then put them in a small saucepan. Sometimes if I have zucchini or yellow squash from the garden, or I keep that in the canning pantry as well, I'll open up a jar and I will blend that, and I'll add it to pasta sauce as well to give the kids extra vegetables. I do think though, based on the amount of sauce that I need, which isn't very much, I think if I tried to hide a quart of zucchini in here, the kids would notice that the sauce looked a little green. So we'll just use this tomato paste. And we're just going to heat this to bubbly, and then we're going to add just some pizza sauce spices. So I'm going to do a little bit of sugar, some salt, some oregano. I will post below everything that I use. Obviously your tastes might be different. There, that's looking nice and thick and yummy. Even though we know we are going to use this week, I am still going to freeze it in ice cube trays. One, because I think I probably have a little more than I need for this week. And also, I know that 1 ice cube equals 1 tortilla pizza. It's perfect size. So when I heat it up, I like to use little mason jars. Everybody gets their 1 little ice cube in their jar, and I heat it up in the microwave, and then they spread it out. And it keeps the little kids from spilling pasta sauce absolutely everywhere because they only have their 1 serving size in front of them. There, it doesn't always work out this way, but it did this time. I had the perfect number of ice cube slots for our peppers and our sauce. So this whole thing's just going to go in the freezer overnight, and then we'll pop out all the individual cubes and stick them in freezer safe bags. There you have it. A little creativity in the kitchen, a little thinking outside of the box can turn leftovers from something that feels like not enough to be worth saving to something that really does make a difference in the bottom line of your grocery budget. And it sounds like a certain little someone has just woken up from nap time, so I'm going to call it good. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.